There comes a moment in every connection when your silence speaks louder than your words, and your absence does what your presence never could. It teaches. You can give, you can try, you can explain yourself 1,000 times, but if someone's not ready to listen, your words become background noise. When you finally step away, though, something incredible happens. The energy shifts, the comfort shatters. Suddenly, what they dismissed starts to echo in the space you've left behind. See, when you were there, your consistency became their comfort. Your effort became their expectation. You gave love so freely that they forgot it was a choice, but when you leave, they begin to realize it wasn't guaranteed, it was given. They start to remember the way you steadied them, the peace you carried, the laughter that filled their days. That's the power of absence. It creates contrast, and contrast creates clarity. Your presence was a gift, but your absence becomes the lesson, because only distance reveals depth. Only silence reveals truth. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about showing through energy what words never could. You don't have to shout. You don't have to prove. You don't even have to explain. You just have to walk away with peace. And while they're busy learning what they lost, you're learning something even greater, what you deserve. You begin to see how powerful your energy truly was. You realize that your worth doesn't depend on who sees it. It depends on how you protect it. You start to build a life where your love is reciprocated, your effort is valued, and your peace is priority. So if you've ever wondered whether they'll notice, they will. If you've ever questioned if your absence matters, it does. Because sometimes the most powerful statement you can make isn't spoken. It's lived. And when you finally leave with grace, you teach the one who took you for granted the lesson they were never willing to learn while you stayed. Walk away knowing this. Your absence doesn't break the bond, it reveals it. It doesn't destroy love, it defines it. And in that revelation, both hearts grow, you through healing and them through remembrance. Because sometimes the most profound transformation happens not in presence, but in absence. Absence reveals what presence concealed. When you're always there, always available, always showing up no matter how you're treated, people start to see your presence as a constant, like air, like sunlight. They stop noticing the warmth you bring because it's always there. But when you leave, when your energy pulls back, that's when the truth rises to the surface. That's when they finally feel the difference between what they had and what they've lost. Because your presence was their comfort, but your absence becomes their mirror. It's easy for someone to overlook your value when you're woven into the fabric of their daily life. Your texts, your calls, your laughter, they become background music. You might think they see you, but often they only see the reflection of their own needs being met through you. They see the support, the love, the reassurance, but they don't stop to think about what it costs you to give it. And you, being the giver, keep offering more, hoping they'll finally notice. You tell yourself that if you keep loving harder, they'll finally see you. But love doesn't wake up those who are comfortable in sleep. Sometimes it's your absence, not your affection, that shakes them awake. When you walk away, the silence you leave behind becomes deafening. The space you once filled becomes sacred ground, an empty place that used to hum with your laughter, your understanding, your care. They start to feel the void you left, the coldness where your warmth once lived. That's when they start to remember all the things they overlooked. The way you always listened, the way you brought calm to chaos, the way you showed up even when you were tired. It's strange how memory grows louder when presence fades, but that's how truth works. Absence strips away illusion. It reveals reality in a way that words never could, and the lesson isn't just for them, it's for you too. When you finally step back, you start to see everything clearly. You realize how much energy you poured into someone who stopped watering the roots of connection. You begin to understand that love without reciprocation becomes exhaustion, and loyalty without respect becomes self-betrayal. It's in that quiet space, the one that feels lonely at first, where your awareness expands. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to fix what's not broken. You simply outgrow it. Absence, for you, becomes healing. It reminds you of your strength, your worth, your capacity to stand alone without shrinking. It teaches you that you were never invisible. You were just in the wrong light. The moment you walk away, you take your energy with you, and suddenly the entire dynamic changes. The person who thought you'd always be there is forced to confront the emptiness your love used to fill. And you begin to fill your own space again, with purpose, with peace, with power. There's something sacred about what absence reveals. It's not about revenge, it's about revelation. It's not about making someone hurt, it's about allowing them to see clearly for the first time. Because when you were present, they saw the love but not the effort, the warmth but not the fire that fueled it. When you're gone, they see both, and they understand the depth they overlooked. So don't be afraid to step away, don't be afraid to let silence do the talking, because in your absence, the truth finally finds its voice. And what it says, both to them and to you, is simple yet powerful. They will remember, but you will rise. Comfort blinds appreciation. It's one of the quietest truths about human connection. When something feels certain, we stop valuing it. When someone's presence is steady, we start mistaking it for permanence. We assume that love will always show up, that care will always flow, that forgiveness will always be waiting on the other side of our mistakes. But that illusion of certainty kills gratitude. When a heart grows comfortable, it forgets how to see. You've probably felt it. You gave and gave until your giving became normal to them. Your kindness wasn't seen as a gift anymore, it was expected. Your consistency became routine. The love you poured out, the patience you offered, the energy you extended, all of it turned invisible in the comfort of familiarity. They stopped saying thank you, not out of cruelty, but out of complacency. That's what comfort does. It dulls the senses. It makes people stop paying attention to the very things that keep them standing. When someone gets used to your love, they stop tasting its sweetness. They stop feeling its weight. They stop realizing how much it costs you to stay patient when they're careless, how much strength it takes to keep showing up when you're tired. But the moment you pull that love back, the moment you take your energy out of the equation, they notice. The absence feels heavier than the presence ever did. That's when comfort breaks and reality returns. It's in that emptiness that awareness is born. Suddenly, they start remembering the little things, the good morning messages, the words that healed, the steady presence that made life softer. They realize the world feels colder now, not because it's changed, but because you're not there to warm it. They start to understand that comfort was never a right. It was a privilege, and privileges can disappear when they're not respected. But let's be honest, comfort doesn't just blind them. Sometimes it blinds you too. When you love deeply, you begin to tolerate more than you should. You start mistaking crumbs for a feast because you're too focused on keeping peace. You tell yourself they'll appreciate it one day, but the truth is, appreciation can't grow in comfort. It grows in awareness, and awareness often requires loss. That's why walking away is so powerful. It breaks the illusion for both sides. When you step away, you shake the foundation of their comfort. You remind them that love is not infinite when it's unappreciated. You show them that your presence was never something to take for granted. It was something to cherish. You also remind yourself that being comfortable in a place where you're undervalued isn't peace, it's settling. And the beauty of breaking comfort is that it makes space for gratitude. It teaches the heart to pay attention again, to feel again. The one who took you for granted will learn that consistency is not guaranteed, and the one who walked away will learn that self-respect is not optional. So don't be afraid to disrupt someone's comfort if it's costing you your worth. Because when you finally remove yourself from a space where you were unseen, your absence becomes the shock that wakes them up. Comfort may have blinded their appreciation, but your leaving will open their eyes. And when that happens, they'll finally understand. The love they took for granted was the very thing that made them feel safe. And by then, you'll have already found peace in knowing that you were never the problem, you were the lesson. Distance creates contrast. When you're always close, always accessible, always ready to give, people stop seeing the depth of what you bring. They grow used to your presence, your effort, your energy, and in that closeness, everything blends into routine. But when you pull back, when space enters the story, that's when the truth begins to separate. That's when they start to see the difference between what they assumed would always be there and what they've actually lost. Contrast is a mirror, it reveals everything. It shows who truly valued you and who merely benefited from your presence. It exposes who loved you for who you are and who loved you for what you provided. Because while presence brings comfort, distance brings clarity. When you step away, suddenly every memory becomes louder. Every moment they dismissed starts to replay with new meaning. The conversations they brushed off now echo. The warmth they overlooked becomes the cold they can't escape. It's through contrast that realization is born. You see, your presence and your absence aren't enemies. They work together. Your presence shows love, but your absence tests it. Your presence gives, but your absence measures gratitude. When you were there, they didn't have to think about how much your energy held them together. But when you're gone, they feel the collapse. That's not cruelty. It's truth making itself known. And this contrast doesn't just teach them, it teaches you. Because when you create distance, you finally see the relationship for what it really was, not through emotion, but through reality. You begin to notice how much you were carrying alone, how much effort you were investing while calling it mutual. You start to see that love shouldn't drain you, it should ground you. You realize that you weren't asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. That kind of awareness only comes when you step back far enough to see the full picture. Distance also gives perspective. It's the pause between breaths, the silence between words, the stillness where everything becomes clear. When you're caught in the noise of closeness, it's easy to confuse attachment with connection, routine with love, comfort with commitment. But when space enters, you can see the difference. You can tell who's trying to reach across the distance, and who's relieved they no longer have to. That's the contrast, effort versus absence, truth versus convenience, and yes, distance hurts at first. It stings to feel the gap, to feel the quiet replace the conversation. But it's within that ache that both hearts grow. One begins to recognize what it lost, the other begins to rediscover what it deserves. That's the beauty of contrast. It doesn't destroy, it defines, it clarifies what was real and what was illusion. So when you step away, do it without anger. Do it with awareness. Understand that your distance is not punishment, it's revelation. It's the space that allows truth to breathe. Let the distance do its work, because one day, that same space that felt painful will feel peaceful. You'll look back and realize that your absence didn't just teach them, it taught you. Because distance creates contrast, and contrast reveals everything: who you were to them, who they were to you, and most importantly, who you've become without them. Silence is powerful. More powerful than words, more powerful than explanations, more powerful than any argument you could ever make. When you stop speaking, when you stop defending, when you stop trying to make someone see your value, your silence becomes the voice that speaks the loudest. Because silence is truth. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't perform. It simply is, and in its stillness it reveals everything that noise used to hide. When you were always explaining, always justifying, always trying to make them understand, they couldn't hear you, not because your words lacked meaning, but because their ears were tuned to comfort, not comprehension. People hear differently when they think you'll never leave, but when you finally fall silent, when the calls stop coming, when the texts don't arrive, when your name no longer flashes across their screen, suddenly the silence roars. It fills the space that your voice once softened, and that's when they begin to hear what they ignored all along. Silence forces reflection. It gives the other person nowhere to hide, no noise to distract them from what they've done or what they've lost. It's in that quiet where the mind starts replaying memories, words, and moments. Every conversation they brushed off, every time they made you feel small, every chance they had to appreciate you, all of it comes back in echoes. Your silence becomes the soundtrack of their regret, and the beauty of silence is that it holds power on both sides. For them, it teaches awareness. For you, it teaches peace, because when you finally stop trying to make someone understand you, you reclaim your energy. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention. You realize that you don't owe anyone an explanation for valuing yourself. Silence becomes your boundary. It's how you say, "I'm done performing for your attention. If you didn't see my worth when I was speaking, you'll feel it when I'm gone." In that stillness, you start to heal. You begin to hear your own thoughts again, unfiltered, undiluted, unapologetic. You remember that your voice matters, but it doesn't always need to be heard by everyone. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Because silence doesn't mean weakness, it means wisdom. It's knowing that not every situation deserves your words, not every wound needs your explanation, not every person deserves access to your energy. And here's the truth. Silence doesn't just echo, it transforms. The person who once took your presence for granted will start to notice how quiet their world feels without your laughter, your insight, your reassurance. They'll scroll through old messages, not to read your words, but to feel your energy again. But by then, your silence will have already spoken the truth. You were never the absence. They were the one who created the void. So let silence be your closure. Let it be your power move, your final word, your healing space. Because silence doesn't demand attention. It commands it. And those who truly care, who truly value, will hear it loud and clear. In the end, silence isn't emptiness, it's elevation. It's the sound of peace replacing pain, of self-respect replacing desperation, of freedom replacing fear. So when you walk away, don't shout your worth. Let your silence say it for you, because in the quiet that follows your exit, they'll finally hear what your words could never make them understand. Healing begins the moment you stop waiting for them to notice what they lost and start noticing what you've found within yourself. When you leave someone who couldn't see your worth, there's a moment of ache, a raw, hollow space where their presence used to be, but that emptiness isn't a punishment, it's an opening, it's the start of your becoming. Because what you gain after walking away is far more valuable than what you've left behind. At first, healing feels heavy. You'll feel the urge to look back, to replay the moments, to wonder if maybe you were too much or not enough. But with every passing day, the silence that once felt unbearable begins to feel sacred. You start to fill that space with new energy, new clarity, new strength. The same stillness that used to remind you of their absence now becomes the ground where you build your freedom. Healing is not about forgetting them, it's about remembering you. You start to notice things you hadn't seen in a long time. The sound of your own laughter, the way the world feels lighter when you're not walking on eggshells, the peace that comes when you no longer have to prove your worth. That's when it hits you. You weren't losing them, you were finding yourself. You were shedding the weight of being misunderstood. You were outgrowing the version of you that settled for less just to feel something that resembled love. Healing is also reclaiming your power. Because when you've been in a space where your love was overlooked, you begin to believe that you have to earn affection, that you have to perform for attention. But when you step away, you realize the truth. You were the light all along. You were never the one who lacked love. You were the one who gave it. And when you finally stop pouring it into someone who can't hold it, that love flows back to where it belongs, you. It's not just emotional healing. It's spiritual realignment. It's the process of coming home to yourself after being lost in someone else's world. You start to rebuild from the inside out, not to prove anything, but because you deserve peace. You stop seeking closure from them because you realize closure isn't something they can give, it's something you create. It's the deep breath you take when you finally say, I'm done waiting for someone else to value me the way I already do. And the beauty of healing is that it shifts the story. The same heart that once broke from being unseen now beats stronger from self-respect. The same hands that once reached for someone who didn't reach back now build boundaries and blessings. The same eyes that once searched for validation now look inward and see a person worth protecting. Healing doesn't erase your past, it redefines it. It transforms your pain into wisdom, your wounds into lessons, and your endings into beginnings. So let your healing be your answer. Let your growth be your revenge. Let your peace be your power, because while they might remember you through regret, you'll remember yourself through rebirth, and one day you'll look back not with sadness but with gratitude, because losing them gave you back you. And that's the real miracle of your absence. It teaches them what they lost, but it teaches you who you truly are. Growth is the final chapter of every goodbye. It's the moment you realize that your story doesn't end when someone leaves, it expands. Growth is what happens after the tears dry, after the silence settles, after you've sat in the stillness long enough to hear your own heartbeat again. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's steady, consistent, and deeply personal. Because true growth doesn't come from being loved right. It comes from learning what you deserve when you weren't. When you walk away from someone who couldn't see your worth, at first it feels like you've lost something irreplaceable. But as time passes, you begin to see that what you lost was never love. It was illusion. You start to grow into the truth that your value doesn't depend on who recognizes it, but on how fully you embody it. Growth begins when you stop asking, "Why didn't they see me?" and start declaring, "I see me now." That shift, from external validation to internal recognition, is the most powerful transformation you can ever experience. Growth is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before you learned to shrink yourself for others. It's remembering your laughter before it was silenced, your dreams before they were dismissed, your energy before it was drained. It's the quiet confidence that comes when you no longer chase what's not meant for you, because once you grow beyond a relationship that limited your worth, you no longer settle for anything that asks you to shrink again. And here's the truth: your growth doesn't just heal you, it challenges others. Your peace becomes their discomfort, your strength becomes their mirror. They see you thriving, smiling, glowing, and in that reflection they confront everything they ignored when they had you. Your growth is the lesson they didn't want but needed. It's the living proof that you were never the broken one. You were the blessing they mishandled, and while they sit in the space your absence created, you rise in the space your freedom allows. Growth also means forgiving, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the grip of resentment. You stop replaying what happened and start rewriting what's next. You learn that growth doesn't come from revenge, but from release. You stop wishing they'd come back, because you realize there's nothing back there for you anymore. You've outgrown that chapter. You've outgrown the version of yourself that begged to be seen. And with every new sunrise, you begin to feel lighter. You speak differently, move differently, think differently. You no longer measure your worth by how much someone else wants you. You measure it by how deeply you honor yourself. You start to attract peace instead of chaos, depth instead of drama, reciprocity instead of resistance. Growth turns the pain of loss into the power of becoming. So yes, your absence teaches them, but your growth transforms you. It's the moment you realize that the end of one story is the beginning of your becoming. You no longer need to be remembered to feel complete, because you are no longer living to be seen. You are living to be whole. And that's the ultimate truth your absence will teach them, that while they stayed the same, you became everything they could never appreciate. When you finally step back from the person who couldn't see you, the silence of your absence begins to echo louder than any words you could have spoken. In that quiet, they start to feel the weight of everything they took for granted. The love that once waited for them, the patience that once healed them, the energy that once surrounded them. But more importantly, you begin to see yourself with new eyes. You realize that your presence was never ordinary. It was rare, powerful, and transformative. What they mistook for stability was actually strength, and what they dismissed as routine was grace. Sometimes people can only understand your worth when they're forced to live without it, and though that truth stings, it's the catalyst for your awakening. Your absence becomes the teacher life always intended. It teaches them that love is not infinite when neglected, that loyalty fades when unreciprocated, and that hearts do not stay waiting in places they are not valued. But it also teaches you that self-worth isn't something others can define. It's something you reclaim. You stop chasing closure because you realize you already have it in your peace. You stop waiting for them to understand because you understand yourself now. The very thing that once broke you becomes the soil where your healing begins. You learn that walking away is not a sign of weakness. It's the most courageous act of self-love there is. As time passes, your growth becomes undeniable. The same energy that once pleaded to be noticed now shines effortlessly. The same heart that once ached for recognition now beats with purpose. You begin to outgrow the need for validation because your confidence comes from alignment, not approval. You see that every tear you cried watered the roots of your rebirth. And while they replay memories, you rewrite your destiny. Your life expands beyond their absence, and you discover joy that no longer depends on someone staying. Your growth becomes not just a reaction to pain, but a declaration of freedom. Eventually, what once hurt becomes your greatest teacher. You forgive not to excuse, but to release. You understand that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves, and that not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with you. Some people are lessons dressed as love, and when their part in your story ends, it's because you've learned what you were meant to learn. You stop resenting the goodbye because you start appreciating the growth it gave you. You no longer need their recognition because your evolution speaks louder than their regret ever could. So when you look back, you don't see loss, you see transformation. You see a person who learned to rise after being unseen, who turned heartbreak into healing, who turned absence into awakening. You realize that your absence didn't just teach him a lesson, it rewrote your life's rhythm. You became your own closure, your own peace, your own beginning. And that's the beauty of it all. While he's learning to remember everything he ignored, you're learning to live beyond needing to be remembered. Because your story doesn't end in his regret, it begins in your rebirth. Thank you for being here, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Thank you for opening your heart to every word, every truth, and every reminder that your worth was never lost, only waiting to be rediscovered. You didn't just listen to this message, you felt it, and that feeling, that spark is the beginning of transformation, because awareness is where healing starts, and today you've taken a powerful step toward your own wholeness. Thank you for allowing yourself to reflect, to feel, and to face the parts of your story that still whisper in the dark. That takes courage, that takes strength. You've walked through the pain, through the silence, through the lessons, and you're still standing. That's not weakness, that's power, and I hope you never forget that your presence is not just enough, it's extraordinary. As we close this moment together, remember this. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who can't see it. You don't need to stay where you're only half loved, and you don't need to be remembered to be whole. Your peace, your growth, your light, they speak for you louder than any goodbye ever could, so walk forward with grace. Hold your head high, let your silence, your healing, and your joy tell the story from here, because you are not what you've lost. You are what you found within yourself. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your heart. This isn't the end, it's a new beginning. Until we meet again, stay true, stay grounded, and never forget the power that lives in your absence. Thank you, and goodbye for now.